All right, we are live. We're waiting to be recorded.
Excuse me.
Are we being recorded, Scott?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. I just got the word that we are being recorded and we are live. Thank you for joining us. This is the February 2nd, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design Meeting. We are at a point where we have a quorum. So we're going to start with our chair with the opening statements. With that, I will start out with a slide here. So this is a virtual meeting protocol. Staff will control the slides displayed throughout the meeting. Applicants, staff, board members, and members of the public should give their name first whenever speaking. Applicants and members of the public must be sworn in before speaking for the first time. Only attendees who have registered to speak before the deadline at noon today may speak during the meeting. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Board members who need to recuse themselves from voting will be temporarily removed from the meeting and readmitted prior to addressing the next item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. Chat has been disabled for everyone. And of course, this meeting is public and is being recorded. With that said, I'll turn it over to our chair.
All right. Thank you, Eric. This is the February 2nd, 2022 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Paula Murphy, Amanda Barton, Calvin Yuji, myself, Joel Adrian. Present from planning staff, Eric Schultz and Lee Batchelder. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and the recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there's opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open the discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. 1, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. 2, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And 3, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54(9)24 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance, the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And finally, D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good. The character of the district not be harmed by the granting of the variance.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Public comment on each application. The chair announces each application followed by staff presentation and recommendation. Staff will call on the applicant to present their application after being sworn in by the chair. Staff will open the public comment period to receive comments from registered attendees in favor, first spoken, then written. Each speaker will be sworn in by the chair. Staff will then recognize registered attendees for public comments in opposition after speaker is sworn in, first spoken, then written. Staff will recognize the applicant for a short rebuttal, and then the chair will then close the public comment period and begin board discussion. Providing comment. If you have submitted a request to speak on an item before the deadline, staff will call on your name when it is your turn to speak and enable your microphone. Your microphone will be disabled after you are done speaking. You may only speak once for each item, and you must state your name and address for the record, where you will not be permitted to provide comment. Board discussion. Following public comment period, board members can make comments, ask questions, and make motions. After a motion and second, board members will vote aye in favor or nay not in favor. If the vote is not unanimous, the chair will poll each member for their vote. The chair shall announce the vote on the motion and the final decision on the application. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. And with that said, Mr. Chair, we have had no deferrals, so we can begin.
All right, I guess for the record, we need to add that 2 additional members are currently present. I think I
That's
see
correct, yes.
Ruthie Ravenel and Jennifer DeCientis here. So with that, we will go to January 5th, 2022 meeting minutes. If everybody's had a chance to look them over, if there are any questions or comments or motions.
Motion to approve.
Okay, by Mr. Kelvin.
A second.
Is there a second? Second by Amanda Martin. Okay, so all in favor of the motion, just say aye in favor.
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 Aye in favor as well. Is there anybody opposed? Then that motion is approved. And I guess that is 6-0. All right, so then our next item on the agenda would be item A1, which is Folly Road Boulevard. It says requested variance from section, that TMS number is 421-1100002. That application number is 2202-02-A1. Requested variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 1 grand tree is zoned SR2.
Okay, this is the application submitted. Owner Richard Virgo, applicant Nathan Kurtel. And this is the explanation on his application. This is a lot that fronts on Folly Road Boulevard between Fenwick Drive and Yeamans Road. It is zoned SR2. As you can see, it is undeveloped. There's a fence across the frontage on Folly, and trees and shrubs exist on the property. This is a view from Folly. This is the survey submitted by the applicant by a registered surveyor, Atlantic Surveying. You can see I then took a snapshot of this and rotated it, since the exhibits are going to be rotated, but you can see the fence across the frontage on Folly. It does kind of angle, and then it's pretty much an enclosed lot right now. There we have, and there was a shed on the property line in which a relatively new fence was installed on that northern boundary line, and half the shed was removed. The proposal is this is their exhibit, scale at 1/16 equals 1 foot. scaling in the location of the two grand trees. You have a 31-inch magnolia in the northwest corner, and then a 27-inch pecan pretty much in the center of the lot, very close to the near center. The proposal would be to have a driveway on the south side of the property on Folly with a turnaround and the house setback well beyond the front setback for SR2 and meeting the rear setbacks and sides. You can see the proposed footprint. The tree is just due north between the turnaround and the house. This is a little proposed perspective of what that would look like. So he had a certified arborist by the name of Marshall DeBow with Charleston tree experts evaluate the tree. This is his report and photos. Background, assignment, proposed use report, and he declares the tree to be a D with a high risk of potential failure. These are again his report. Some termite infestation, some cavities, some breakage. These are city photos. So my back is to Folly Road, kind of just inside the gate. And you can see where the tree is kind of centrally located. You can see the branches of the magnolia to the left, and then a closer up of the tree. And that's the magnolia that sits in the northwest corner, in which the driveway would obviously be south of that. Before I get into that, I forwarded you all an email from Miss Suzanne Lanier. The reason this was deferred last month was that we had an error in the posting of the site. We put the sign in front of 47 Fenwick instead of the Folly Road lot. So we felt that we needed to re-advertise and get the sign in the proper location. And we do have a photo of our sign placed with permission of the owner to staple it right to the fence on Folly. So we got that right this time. In preparation, if it had been heard last month, Ms. Lanier had submitted a letter voicing some concerns. There appears, or there is an apparent possible property line dispute, and she was asking for the board to maybe consider deferring so that her attorney could evaluate the application and so on and so forth. And then the most recent email, which I shot over to y'all, was that she has indeed filed a property boundary dispute with her law firm, and it's going to have hopefully resolution to that. But based on the application, and this is obviously addressing the tree and whether or not it meets the hardship test, I believe it does. Just the narrowness of the lot, the depth of the lot, the location of the tree, the arborist report pointing out some structural defects. So with that said, staff is prepared to recommend approval with the condition that must plant 20 caliper inches of native canopy trees on the project site, must provide a landscape plan with the single family house plan application for review and approval, and must use 4-foot chain link fence as tree protection barricades for the existing magnolia. So with that said, Scott, if you could promote Mr. Nate Ertel. Nate, can you hear us?
pressed shift mute.
Looks like he's got, oh, he had it a second. He's muted again.
Unmute myself. I think I'm.
There you
Can you hear
go.
me?
Yes, we got
can
you.
hear you.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
we got you. Nate,
Mr.
this is,
Hertel, is there any other member of your team joining you, or are you just it tonight?
Just me. Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
all right, Nate, this is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you in for the record, that if you would state your full name and your address for the record.
Nathan Hurdle.
What?
Sorry.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Nathan
Excellent.
Hurdle, 554 Godfrey Park Place, Charleston, 29407.
All right, thank you. So the floor is yours to go ahead and present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Nathan Hurdle. Thank you for the consideration of my request this evening. I'm a licensed South Carolina residential builder. I do renovations and near zero energy new construction, and I've been searching for a while. As you are probably all well aware, there are not many lots available in Charleston, and we built last year, we completed last year a new near zero energy house on Live Oak Avenue. It was very tight construction, 0.44 ACH 50, and then all kinds of energy upgrades to it, including a solar array and a Tesla Powerwall on it. So it was near zero energy. I want to kind of expand on those concepts, and we've got the concept for this house, not necessarily this lot. I've just been looking for any lot in West Ashley. Structural insulated panel walls, super tight mass timber for the flooring, triple glazed European windows from Poland, mini split VRF mechanical system. So even if we don't put a solar array on this house, I mean, just from the get-go, the house that we would build is going to be roughly using 30 to 40% of the energy of even a new construction house, not even existing housing stock. So kind of super high performance home. We've been looking for a lot. This lot has been for sale for about 2.5 years, and I think it's just an ideal location. It's near jobs, near retail and social services, near shopping, near schools, and then ideal for a family that would want to maybe have 1 or 0 vehicles. If they could use transit, they could do biking. Obviously, with the upcoming construction of the pedestrian bridge across to downtown, this location is just ideal for the family that would like to do that kind of live that kind of lifestyle. So this lot is perfect except for this pecan tree that's in the center of the lot, and I'm not about trying to take down trees. I mean, we love that magnolia in the corner, and if this pecan were in a different location, we would try to go to great lengths to preserve it, but it's not. It's right near the center of the lot, in the center of the lot, right to left, and just forward of the center of the lot, back to front. There's, we're not trying to build a monster house, just something that fits with the scope of the neighborhood. And I mean, there's, the documents that I submitted, that was my just rough SketchUp drawings of placements. However we lay it out, there's not a way to have, it'll be important on this with a follow road access, that we've got a turnaround for the driveway. That just takes up some land. And then, the house, just a reasonable 1,500 square foot footprint of the house. There's not a way to lay this out. Especially, what would be best is if we do try to minimize, completely minimize, or, have zero impact to that magnolia tree in the front. So importantly, we don't own this lot. I have a contract to purchase this lot from Mr. Vargo pending approval from this board. We will work with an architect and a civil engineer. We've talked with them. I don't want to start paying the fees until we know that we can take this tree down, so that we know that we'll go forward with this. Trying to look at my notes. Yeah, not possible to shift the house right or left, back or front, I think in any shape. And then as I wrote to Mr. Schultz before, our request would stand even if this tree were healthy. But I mean, as you can see, so I did not hire the arborist. The arborist was hired by the owner of the property months before we had a contract on this. So the arborist evaluated the tree and gave the health a D. He signed the affidavit that he was not paid for a predetermined conclusion about whether to take the tree down. There's storm damage, insect damage, and even by this arborist evaluation, I think he writes, there's no way to restore this tree to good health. So, we're looking at building a house with a 50 to 75 year time frame horizon. I think, being able to remove this tree, put a nice house here, and then plant new trees that will, grow and become the stately, nice trees that we all love and enjoy, I think is the right way to go. Thanks for your consideration.
Well, thank you, Nate. Eric, did we have anybody that was registered to speak against or for this application?
Chairman, we had nobody registered to speak in favor or opposition. And again, the email that came in last month, I shot over to y'all for your review, and we received no comments, no written comments through the Innovate site, either for in opposition or support.
All right, then we'll close this application to the public, and it'll be open to the board for discussion. I'll go ahead and start. And I think the applicant has a hardship case. I think that the tree appears to be in poor health. The only thing he could potentially do would be maybe slide this house further back on the lot if he were to get a rear setback variance. But I think that ultimately we should have him hold that rear setback variance so that he has some backyard, because he's not going to have front yard, because he's got to get that turnaround to drive out. And going back to the tree and its location on that property is just unfortunate. I don't believe that the neighbor's lot line dispute has any impact on that tree removal. Whether the shared property line is off by 2-3 feet isn't going to change the location of that tree front to back. So I think we can safely proceed with this discussion and application. Those are my thoughts. Anybody else?
Which neighbor has the lot line dispute? Is it, I'm looking at the aerial, is it the TMS ending in 003 or 001?
It's 47 Fenwick. So that would be the property to the north at the corner of Fenwick and Folly.
Okay. And Eric, what are the requirements for approval? You mentioned they would have to submit a site plan or go through site planning.
Yes, so I'll go back to the conditions. Staff recommended approval with the condition to plant 20 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the site. I doubt you may be able to sneak a tree in the front yard if you were to do something with that angled fence and of course the driveway, but I would imagine the most of them would be side and rear yard. Must provide a landscape plan with the single family house plan application for review and approval. So what happens if the applicant were to move forward, he would submit the house plan through the city's permit system. And, typically we don't always get landscape plans, but we would ask that a landscape plan accompany that plan so that we can review and make sure that 20 caliber inches are shown on the site. And then to protect that wonderful southern magnolia in the northwest corner, we'd ask for a 4-foot chain link fence to be used. And of course, that would be inspected through the single family house plan review process prior to any construction.
So my observation is, while I'm in agreement with what the applicant is requesting, I think condition number 2 and number 3 will be maybe somewhat difficult to accomplish until the dispute, the boundary line dispute is resolved. So I think we may be putting the applicant in a position where the applicant will not be able to comply with 2 and 3 until that boundary line dispute is resolved, because that's going to affect, I'm assuming, their landscaping and the position of where that chain link fence may need to be.
No, so I'm sorry, Kelvin, the chain link fence is just a temporary fence. Let me show you here. If you can envision that there's a wooden fence on the property line, which is in dispute. And of course, the fence on Folly Road Boulevard. I don't know if that fence on Folly Road Boulevard will remain. If they want to be kind of like in a compound, or they'll open it up for views into the lot or not. But what we would be looking for during a temporary fence during construction would be basically a U-shaped temporary chain link fence around this tree to protect its root zone during construction. That would just be a temporary fence. And then the yard, you know, I don't know, again, you are correct. I don't know if the property or that fence will have to be dismantled and moved because it's not on the right side of the line, or, you know, I'm not sure how that will fall out. But I believe there's still going to be enough space on the lot, 2 to 3 feet off that property boundary to plant trees. So I think it could be accomplished. And I don't know if the applicant will even submit until all that legal action is resolved. I don't, that's not my
Eric,
area.
if you go back to the site plan that was done by I guess just the survey that was done by the surveyor. There you go. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, that pin at Folly Road is real and exists. You know, the rebar 5/8 found there, and the 1-inch pipe at the back is real and exists. That line has been platted and recorded somewhere. So whether the wood fence that we see is 2 feet onto lot 74 or 3 feet on lot 73 is really irrelevant to the landscape plan. If he uses this survey as his base to create a site plan, locate that house, and do his landscape plan. I mean, those are recorded platted lines that you know, it's just dispute from lot 73 saying, I think that fence might, in my opinion, would be that fence is potentially in the wrong spot, but those points are real and exist. You know, so one could easily draw a line from A to B on site and pull a string. So I don't know. I feel like that, yes, I mean, if I were the one purchasing the lot, I would make sure that my neighbor and her lot line dispute was resolved before I'm moving forward with permitting. My assumption would be that if he was moving it forward without the resolution, owner of lot 73 would probably find some way to get a stop and a halt on things. But I don't see where it prohibits us from moving forward with the application and then putting it into their hands to resolve as neighbors.
I would agree with that because what are our side setbacks there? I missed what the zoning was when you.
SR2, Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's a 25 front, 25 rear, and 9 and 9 on your sides.
That's correct.
So if there was an issue with that, they could always make the house a foot or two narrower or something, but there's the tree's still in the middle of the lot regardless.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
if
I'm with you.
if they use an actual survey done by a surveyor to site that house, he's going to take that line of south 85 degrees, 50 minutes, 37 seconds. Oh, sorry, that was the north one. He's going to use those call outs and offset
Yep.
9 feet on the sides, 25 off the front and rear, and get that house to fit. Location of the fence is irrelevant. So I think we can move forward.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just making sure that we're not creating something that the applicant cannot do, not
Right.
because of their own actions, but because of a legal action.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments on this? And if not, would there be a motion?
A motion to approve.
All right. So Calvin's motion is for approval. Is there a second?
I
A second.
All right. Who wants that second?
Jennifer, you can have the second.
All right. So Jennifer gets a second on that. If y'all would just say aye in favor, nay in favor.
Aye.
I in favor.
In favor?
I in favor.
I in favor. I in favor.
I am in favor as well. Is there anybody opposed? The motion is approved 6-0. And Nate, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to our second item on the agenda, item A2, and that would be Maybank Highway on Johns Island. TMS numbers are 279 0000029, 030 and 035. The application number is 2202-02-A2. Excuse me, request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 5 grand trees. Request a variance, request a special exception from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 10 grand trees. Request a variance from section 54-330 to allow reduced impervious construction setback near the base of 16 grand trees. Will be zoned PUD.
Okay, this is the application, owner Stanley Martin Companies, applicant HLA. This is HLA's narrative on the hardship and special exception. It's an assemblage of several properties. A couple of them were recently annexed into the city. It was also recently ratified by City Council for a planned unit development, which required a vigorous and lengthily process through TRC for the PUD document. The reason it's a PUD, it's a mixed use PUD because it's incorporating the existing tattooed moose on Johns Island and several vacant properties to the east and the land behind the tattooed moose. This is just a street view of the entrance to the tattooed moose. The site plan is this. So the PUD, it has various land uses, commercial to keep the existing restaurant in its current operation with improvements to its parking and circulation. The actual driveway that I just referenced in that earlier photo becomes a public right-of-way. As you can see, there are some very lovely grade B live oaks. So we're going to be working a public road through there. The existing conditions is that the existing gravel is so compacted. I think we're going to be relatively safe doing what we're planning to do here. But because of the protection zones, there are several trees that require encroachments. As you move through that new public access off of Maybank, you're then going to enter into a single family attached neighborhood. What was critical for the city during the whole PUD process was that road to the very rear, plan west, if you will, plan left, parallel to the wetlands. That will be, that's being set up as a future public right-of-way that will traverse across Johns Island parallel to Maybank, giving residents and motorists a choice in lieu of everybody going out onto Maybank. It's part of our comp plan, our future network of connected streets. And so that was critical to this whole process. They are also in a special protection area with stormwater. So they have very rigorous and pretty stringent stormwater requirements. So basically you see the main road, it will connect up with a 50-foot right-of-way paralleling the wetlands. And then there's a couple alleys, if you will, serving the rear of the townhouses. And then open space, of course, is very important with a planned unit development. I broke it down. We have lots of water oaks falling toward the wetland, a major cluster of water oaks, all in very poor condition. I agreed with the grades by the certified arborist, a couple poplars and hickory and a live oak. So the F tree on this exhibit is a storm damaged tree. a water oak, so that is not being considered, but I just wanted to show you again the reduced impervious construction trees. That's the crosshatch, the black little dot over the trees are being slightly impacted with the proposed improvements. This is where we get into the nitty gritty of the poor trees. You know, I don't know how long this land has been vacant. I really couldn't find any indications of what might have occurred on these lands in years past, but the wetlands are very much wetlands, and the grade does kind of fall off. And we just got a cluster of water oaks, which is indicative of kind of wet feet, having wet feet. The tree that you see in the pond in the center, I discovered during my, and I will share my field notes, that's a 23.7 live oak. I have a photo of it. So part of the reason this was deferred is I was preparing my comments and shot them over to the development team. And part of the special exception requirement is a fact-finding function that if you can preserve a non-grand category 1 tree, then you try to do so. And I really felt strongly about them trying to modify their pond, and we'll get into more discussion there. But 1F tree and other water oaks. These are the photos. When we have this many trees, I still have not figured out the right way to present, but this is what the applicant presented. You can see the category F water oak in the bottom left. Different tree numbers, conditions of the trees, grade B, grade Cs. So these are my field notes. What I did, I put the number that corresponds to the table next to them. So if you have a specific question about a number, we can kind of zoom in on that. You can see where I put an X where the 23.7, that was an estimate on its location. They went back out and surveyed it. I had concerns, which I'll get into, but you can see in the top where they were showing trees to be impacted, there was a sewer or a stormwater line bisecting a large tree and a grade B tree. I was concerned about that. And then where they were showing water line or the sewer line getting into the site over the 75-foot buffer, I had some concerns about that. So just wanted to share my field notes. So this was the previously cleared corridor on the east side. There was a curb cut and there's actually a sewer line that runs down that. It's too shallow for this development, but there's also a water line there. So they plan to put the water in that open corridor, and then we'll discuss the sewer in just a minute. This is the live oak I came across. My eyes, when I traverse through the woods, I'm looking at where I'm going, and that from a distance, that almost looked grand, but it ended up being 23.7. But it is a category 1 tree and it's worthy of saving, in my opinion. So we asked that they work around that. So they were going to bring a sewer line basically where that red circle is, which would involve the removal of pines and other small trees. And this is in the country section of the Johns Island Community Plan. And we're trying to maintain that country character. So I had really big concerns about the placement of that sewer line. Through many discussions with the applicant, we worked out something that I'll share. So I was thinking you could easily move it to the left and come through the opening in front of the tattooed moose, or put both the water and sewer in that clearing that exists already on the east side. But the sewer has to be at a certain depth and they have to tie into the line on Maybank in a certain location. So what we ended up doing is they're going to directional bore under the 75-foot buffer, maintaining the vegetation. So I asked for an entry and exit pit on the bore, and we'll be very close to the 27-inch or the 35.5 live oak tree number 27, but or contour number 27. I'm sorry. But I think we'll be able to, with the chain link fence in place and what have you, we'll be able to enter there or under the buffer and then exit on the south side of Maybank and create a new manhole and tie into the sewer. This is a, Chris Cannon is involved with the Johns Island. Again, he submitted this well before the deadline last month. He was actually out of town, but was able to submit this, and he would like to express my support for the staff recommendation on number 6 at the time. This is my personal support, not presenting the Johns Island, as we do not meet until January 6th, but I just wanted to add that. So with all that said, staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 244.5 caliber inches of native canopy trees. I have not done the math, what that would translate to the number of trees, but I'm sure it's quite high. Must provide a couple of canopy trees and native plantings of low shrubs at the buffer line in front of the restaurant to prevent the use of the buffer as outdoor dining. So again, the tattoo moose was in the county. It got absorbed through the annexation in the PUD document. The PUD document's very clear that the 75-foot buffer is what it is across the Maybank frontage, and you can't use the buffer for commercial activity. So we're just trying to not to block the view, but to add a few shrubs, and they're actually talking about moving a little wood little fence that exists out there back to the buffer line. And then must preserve the 23.7 live oak as shown on the city's exhibit. They do not have to incorporate a hard edge to the proposed pond. They've worked it out where they can maintain the volume. So I just want to keep that in there to make sure that there's no, if they get down the road with further engineering that they need the volume, the tree still is to be maintained, preserved. Must use 4-foot chain link fences, tree protection barricades. Must have a certified arborist develop a specific tree preservation plan for the live oaks to be impacted on the entrance drive. Again, we'll be introducing curb, sidewalk, but no utilities. I'm not sure yet about stormwater, but I think we'll be able to keep stormwater curb inlets and that out of that area. And but certified arborist should develop a preservation plan. Certified arborists develop a specific preservation plan for the water oak to be impacted on one side by the alley street. That's where we move the stormwater. I can go back and show you specifically. Must have a certified arborist prune and treat all grand trees to be preserved on the site. And then must use the existing cleared corridor on the eastern side of the project for water utility access installation, and use directional bore construction method to install the sewer utility under the 75-foot landscape buffer. And we've already kind of worked that out, but I just want to keep those in as conditions. And that's what I have to say on this one. So with that said, we need to recognize, let me see here who's present. Roger Hunt, Kyle Taylor, and once they're promoted, we'll ask what other members are on their team. Roger, can you hear us?
Sorry, I was just linking me in.
Who else is with you this evening?
We should have engineers from HLA joining. Would be
Nick. I'm
Nick
sorry,
Allport.
I didn't. Yeah, there's a huge list here, so I'm trying to. Nick Allport.
And Mark Lipsmeyer may be available as well.
Yes, Mark Lipsmeyer. Any others?
I'm not sure if Adriana and Kyle from HLA are joining. I think it was just Nick.
And I think I misspoke. I think Kyle Taylor is not with HLA. I'm sorry. I was thinking Kyle. Is that correct, Nick?
Yep. Yeah, I'm here from HLA.
Kyle Taylor is not part of your team.
He is not, no.
Yeah. All right. So sorry, Scott. I apologize. So Nick, Mark, and Roger. Any others? Okay,
Don't think so.
sorry about that.
All right. Then I'll get started and swear everybody in if you would say your answer. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Did everybody answer?
Yep.
Okay. Then whoever is going to start, just state your name, your address, and the floor is yours to begin speaking.
It's Nick Allport. Address is 29A Linebach Drive. That's Charleston, South Carolina. Zip code 29407.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nick.
All right. How y'all doing? Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. I think you went over the things pretty thoroughly. As you stated previously, we had gone through a lengthy PUD concept plan review and TRC review on this. There were multiple iterations put out. The desire of the city to have the interconnected road back there ultimately drove us to this iteration. The elevation, the fill and the grading associated with the interconnected road is what is driving the removal of these grand trees. SCDOT required us to come through the existing tattooed noose entrance, which you stated is a compacted gravel and will work well for the entrance there. The directional boring underneath the buffer to the utilities you've covered. We moved the storm drain out in between the two grand trees in the back to avoid conflicts there. And reworked the pond for the 23.7 specimen grand tree, or live oak, excuse me. Let's see here. All the other impacts we've got are associated with the our circulation. As you noted, the water oak and the live oak will work with an arborist. Don't plan for those. The other two up in the buffer is a small path. We don't see an issue with that. Other than that, I think you covered everything quite well. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Nick. Mr. Roger, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you. This is Roger Hunt. I live at 547 Cooper Village Lane in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, zip code 29464. Thank you to Eric again and to the board for your time and for reviewing these tonight. I had very little to add. I did want to agree that through the process, we did reduce the size of footprints of a number of these buildings to try and make more open space, provide more clearance for existing trees, and to meet with all the other requirements. I think we've got a good plan here, and I really appreciate the city's guidance through this. Agree with the conditions that we have that Eric has put forth, and we're working around those. The only comment that I have would be on condition number 2, being that we're applying for the site development of the residential section, and the restaurant owner not being part of the applicant. I'm reluctant to obligate the restaurant owner to conditions that he can't answer to in this, and I ask that we take that condition into the plan review process and see if there's something we can work out with us and the restaurant owner going forward, because unfortunately he's not part of this directly as an applicant, and we're again reluctant to apply conditions to his property that he may not be aware of. But I mean, it seems like kind of a minor condition, but still would like to look at that outside of the BZA if possible.
I'm willing to work with that. I mean, the PUD is very clear that and it was part of the open space exhibit as well, that the 75-foot buffer traverses the entire frontage adjacent to Maybank, and it's clear that buffers can't be used for commercial use. You can have a sign in it, you can have a fence in it, you can have a sidewalk in it, but you can't place picnic tables and use it for patron use area. So we can, I'd like to keep it in, kind of, just have it on record, and we can work out the details as far as planting and trees with the owner.
And one other comment, Mark Lipsmeyer does not need to speak.
Okay, thank you. Then is there anybody, Eric, that was registered to speak in favor or against? That's just from general public, or did we receive any additional comments?
So for item B2, nobody registered to speak in favor or oppose. And again, I included that email from Mr. Chris Cannon, and we received no emails to my knowledge regarding opposition or no written comment through the innovation portal.
Okay, and that was for item A2, correct? Not
A2, I'm sorry, A2, yes.
All right, very good. Then we'll close this application to the public, and we'll have it open to the board. I think that the applicant has done a very nice job of presenting the plan, the things they've worked around. Eric, I thank you for locating and finding that little 23.7-inch tree. And I think we need to use the roundup on that one and make it 24. So I appreciate you, because it looked like it was a beautiful canopy as well. I personally don't have any problems with the application, would be in favor of it.
I thought one of the emails actually did reference the Johns Island.
Yeah, there were, I think, now that I'm thinking about it, I think one of the many emails that came in, some of them were generalized about no grand trees being removed. So I don't know if they specifically called out A2 or not. My apologies.
I think one of them did. But it wasn't very specific. I think it was just didn't agree with taking any grand trees out on Johns Island, I believe. Something of that ilk.
Right. Okay. All right. Are there any other comments or questions? And if not, will someone make a motion?
I'll move to approve with staff recommendations.
Motion for approval from Ruthie. Is there a second to her motion?
I'll second.
And it was Paula, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if you would just reply aye in favor and nay not in favor.
I in favor.
Aye.
All right, is that everybody? Didn't sound like everybody. I in favor. Was there anybody that was opposed? And if not, then the motion is approved 6-0. And then that will get us to our next item, which is item B1. B1 is Central Park Road. The TMS is 340-0300-007. Application number 2202-02-B2. And it was a request an after the fact special exception from section 54-327 to allow the removal of one grand tree zoned SR1.
Okay. This is the application, and I'm just going to do a prelude to this application for to set the stage, if you will, set the table. Several months ago, when Mr. Eric Schultz, myself, was conducting the tree barricade inspection for this approved cluster development, I discovered a 4-liter persimmon tree, which was not shown on the survey. I brought that tree to the attention of the development team. They had it located and evaluated. They were instructed that I could not do a staff level approval on the removal of that tree. And they made at the direction of the city, an application, special exception application to proceed with the hope that this board would agree and with the facts and remove or seek approval to remove the tree. At the time, the board contemplated the facts. The board made a motion to defer and ask the applicant to come back with some further more information. Between that time and I think it was around January or December-ish, the city discovered that the tree was removed without city approval, without a city permit, or by action of this board. So of course I had to get with our legal team. Our legal team advised me to do a couple of things. We issued a municipal summons to livability court, and we asked that they make an application to this body to seek an after the fact special exception to address the removal of the tree. At the request of the applicant and their attorneys, we decided to defer the livability court date in order to have this heard first. So basically that is where we are. We have this application in front of us as an after the fact special exception. And then I believe it's the, we're in February already. I think it's in just a couple weeks. We'll be making a trip over to the city's livability court to address the summons that were issued for the unlawful removal of the grand tree. So I think the table is set. So this is their application. And what we also agreed upon is that once they made this application, the summons would end. We were doing it per day. So I think 8 summons were issued from the time of the discovery of the tree being removed. And then we also lifted the stop work order, which we placed on the site after we received this application for them to proceed with earthwork. So we did, there was a little bit of a stoppage and what have you on the site. So this is their after the fact application. This is their renewed request for special exception. Obviously the site is a flag-shaped lot on Central Park Road, zoned SR1 by right, being developed as a cluster development. Went through a very long and rigorous review with the city. This is the aerial of the site, portion of the site. This is the tree in question. Note how there's kind of manicured lawn around it. What threw me off when I did my barricade inspection was the silk fence was running right down the curved section of that newly poured concrete and bypassed the tree to the left. And I was like, is the silk fence off or what's going on here? And after kind of walking around and figuring, I think the silk fence is in the correct spot. That means this tree is on the property, but it was never picked up on the original tree survey. This is the site. You can see that little clouded areas where the tree ended up being surveyed in. A blow up of that. So it's adjacent to that residential property. This is where the tree ended up, its location relative to the approved road, entrance road. Again, just a closer view of that. These are the photos and report by Natural Directions that were prepared for the original special exception. You can see the tree on the left, fully foliated. Our definition of a grand tree is that if it's physically connected as it comes out of the ground, then each stem that is 6 inches in diameter or greater is measured. And if it totals 24, then it's considered a grand tree. The evaluation by Natural Directions at the time was 8, 9, 11 persimmon tree, grade C, in fair condition. The applicant had a second opinion done by Mr. Van Atkins. 4-trunk persimmon tree. These trees sprouted out of a rotted persimmon stump 15 years ago, etc. Mrs. Seabrook was always lived here, remembers the original persimmon tree died. But, you know, it is what it is. If there was a parent persimmon tree, if you will, and it got damaged in a storm and the stump was cut and these grew to the size that it's considered a grand tree under the city's definition. This is a letter from Reverend Charles Seabrook stating that he's lived there, had concern about the tree, multiple seeding sprout from one rotten stump, now endangered to families' cars, house, power line. So with that, I want to, the applicant requested that they have their presentation inserted into the PowerPoint, which I was happy to do. So with that said, we will, let's see, we need to promote Ellis Lesserman, Alvin Johnson, and let's get those folks unmuted to, I don't recognize all the names that may be part of their team. Ellis, can you hear us? Ellis or Alvin?
Hello, Eric.
Hello. What other members of your team should I identify to be promoted?
So, Eric, unless there's a question that I'm not able to answer, I'm the only person that needs to be elevated, but Alvin Johnson and Chris McKinney are corporate representatives, and they are on the, they are viewing the meeting.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Ellis, I'm going to swear you in, and then if you state your full name and address. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My office address is at 418 King Street, downtown. I appreciate Mr. Schultz's presentation. And as he's noted, this is a project that is many, many years in the making. Eric, if you could go to the next slide, please.
Yes.
And that's how we should, right? You control the slides, correct?
Yes. Yeah. You tell me to
super.
advance. Yes.
Eric gave a factual presentation. I want to correct one item. On November 29th at 1:54, we notified the city that the tree had been removed. That's important because this process involves a basic question of whether this tree is or is not a grand tree. My client was asked to present that application really under protest. We don't believe that the tree was grand. And ladies and gentlemen, we're not alone in that. Parker Land Surveying is our registered land surveyor. They did the initial work as this was going through concept plan and other approvals. They didn't believe it was a grand tree and didn't include it on the survey. And they've prepared an affidavit to that effect. Seaman Whiteside has done tremendous amount of work on this project. And all of their work, this was never determined to be a grand tree and therefore was not included in an application. The members of this panel that have been on since 18 will remember that this project came before you twice and obtained approvals to remove trees. If we believe that this tree needed to be approved for removal, it would have been included in those original submissions. But Parker Land Surveying didn't include it. Seaman Whiteside did not include it. Natural Directions has been our arborist throughout this project. They did not include it. So those aren't just the applicant. Those are three well-recognized members of the development community that are in good standing. And I'll add a fourth. The city never identified this as a grand tree in the first, second, third, or fourth year of this process. And that involves many site visits, inspections, interactions, approvals. So we go all the way through the process with this not being a grand tree. The city asks us, and of course, when I say ask, there's certain amounts of pressure that are involved with that sort of request, to come before this board and to ask for removal of this tree. That presupposes that it's grand. After further review of this, and after obtaining the opinion from Van Atkins, who indicates that this is really 4 trees, and upon receiving and confirming the request of our neighbor that the tree ought to be removed and that they supported it being removed, we removed the tree because we are of the belief that it isn't a grand tree. The neighbor believes that the tree is a nuisance, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we're here again before the board to ask, does it constitute a grand tree? The city's ordinance itself doesn't include any guidance. This includes, of course, 24 inches at diameter breast height. There may be an internal definition that talks about how things are connected or how things should be interpreted as a grand tree, but we're not aware of that from our review of the ordinance. Eric, if you could continue forward. Eric already showed you the opinion that we received from a well-recognized certified arborist with decades of experience in Charleston. He's appeared before this board, I'm sure, numerous times. You'll see that that is dated September 23rd, 2021, which is after our initial appearance before this group on this particular persimmon tree, which again is a category 3 grade C tree. And this factored into my client's decision to say, are we asking to remove something that isn't grand? Or are we ended up taking a position that it's grand when we believe that it isn't, based on this opinion? Eric already summarized the points that were in Mr. Atkins's opinion, but again, that it was 4 separate trees of 11 inches, 11 inches, 8 inches, and 9 inches. Again, with the history about how about 15 years ago, these are 4 sprouts that arose from a stump. Therefore, not grand. Therefore, not requiring approval from the BZA for the removal. Eric, if you could continue forward, thank you. And you can continue forward. That's a blow up of the opinion of Mr. Atkins. This is another picture of the tree. This is prior to when my clients took ownership of the property and before doing any work. But you can get a sense and where Mr. Atkins' opinion is based to see that indented area and the rotted stump is where these 4 trees emanate from and then eventually appear to be grown together. Eric, if you can move forward. And so I want to ask another question because I think it's important to this board's consideration. Were the persimmon sprouts, the 4 sprouts out of that rotted stump, were they a nuisance that both the affected neighbors and the property owner wanted to remove? Eric, if you could move forward, thank you. Eric did show you the letter from Reverend Charles Seabrook. He's lived in this area and he's been affiliated with this property. He's lived on this property for more than 80 years. There was a time in his life when he lived in New Jersey, but he is a pillar of that community. He signed this letter for us in support of what we wanted to do, which was to remove this tree because we believed it was not grand. After this letter was submitted, the city's attorneys sent a subpoena to Mr. Seabrook to interrogate him about this letter. Eric, if you could move forward. I just want to introduce the board to Reverend Charles and Miss Rebecca Seabrook. You may not have ever met them. And you're going to hear from various people that have a lot of consternation about this persimmon tree. But the 2 people that know the most about it and the most affected by it are the 2 people that are before you right here. Eric, if you can move forward. The city scheduled a deposition of 85-year-old Reverend Seabrook. Miss Seabrook was so interested in wanting to speak that she participated in the deposition as well and spoke up. It was taken just on January 25th, under oath. Eric, if you could move to the next page. This is Mr. Seabrook's testimony about this persimmon tree. The limbs were rotted. They grew up on the side. The main tree that Hugo took down was also rotted. Eric, if you could move forward. Again, talking about how Hugo took the limbs off the tree and he thought it was dead. His sister, who's now deceased, that used to be on the property, both Reverend Seabrook and his sister indicated that they fully intended to remove this tree, but would they do so later? Eric, if you could go to the next slide. Again, Reverend Seabrook talking again about the tree. It had two limbs coming out of it. The bottom was rotted. And two limbs coming out, and it says they were strong. He says they weren't strong. As you can see, he says these were the ones that were fragile. Every time the wind blows, it would break off. I was going to take it down anyhow. Eric, if you could move forward again. And Reverend Seabrook speaking again, before they, meaning my client, bought the property, he was going to cut the tree down because it was a hazard. Again, under oath, the Reverend is testifying about how every time the wind blows, the limbs would break off. His sister couldn't remove it herself because she was handicapped, and Reverend Seabrook at 85 is the last of the children in the family. Mrs. Seabrook wanted to speak up. She asked permission if she could also talk during Reverend Seabrook's deposition. He said, you have to see it to believe it. It was on her car because her car wasn't in the garage. The car was right up there at the persimmon tree and it messed up her car. Eric, if you could move forward. So to sum what we've just discussed so far, we are requesting an after the fact approval. We don't believe that the tree was grand. So respectfully, we didn't believe that it was something that was before the BZA's jurisdiction. So at that point, we withdrew our application. We notified the city and we removed the tree. Again, which we considered it to constitute 4 persimmon sprouts. That's a category 3 grade C. It's been documented under oath and through letters as a nuisance and as a hazard. So we do believe that the standard for removal is met. Eric, if you could move forward. Again, you're very familiar, and each time you have these meetings, you typically are asked to consider one or more special exceptions. But the criteria for doing so include, is the tree in poor health? Will the removal of that tree allow for protection of a specimen tree to be protected that otherwise would be removed? And on the land plan and the road plan, you'll see that there is a configuration of this road that allows for this tree to be, that would call for this tree to be removed. Again, it wasn't on the plan because no one believed that it was grand. And really, I think there was a question as to which side of the property line it was even on. But furthermore, and this was the basis for the special exception request in August, that it is absolutely right within the location of a proposed roadway or drainage work, and that there isn't a reasonable design or economically reasonable alternative that exists to save the tree. So I want to provide a little bit more context about what we did. And I thank you for your patience in letting me speak, but this is obviously something that's of importance to all concerned. We looked at transplanting the tree. It's too weak to transplant. We had meetings on site with Eric, who was very willing to meet with us. And so I thank him for that. But was able to come to any resolution. We had multiple folks come out to look at this tree that are certified arborists that said that it wasn't grand. Moving the tree requires a reconfiguration of this property that's already vested. It's already been through preliminary plat, concept plan. It's already been in front of this board twice. It's already been in front of DHEC for both technical review and for coastal zone consistency certification. It's been before the James Island Public Service District. It's been before the Charleston water system. It's been before every municipality and it's approved. The ground's been cleared. So we believe in the evidence presented before you that all the criteria for removal would apply. Eric, if you could kindly move us to the next slide. Again, when I look at prior approvals, we can see that no one, the city, Seaman Whiteside, Parker Land Surveying, or Natural Directions ever indicated this tree on any of the prior plan approvals, which happened over a course of 4 years, culminating in a preliminary plat approval in January, just a year ago, in January of 2021. Eric, if you could move forward once more. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the proposed mitigation plan. And you know from looking at these, the green circles are trees that will be planted. In total, there will already be 224 inches of mitigation that will be planted as part of this development. These will include elms, various types of oaks, and pond cypress. You can see that between the stormwater features that have been added and developed into this plan, there's a lot of room that's going to be taken up to absorb stormwater, both from from above and the neighborhood that's above it to meet with the city's most stringent possible requirements. It looks like there's room for further trees to be planted on the far left of the property, but I think that Eric can attest. That's just because that plan shows the grand trees. There's a lot of protected trees and 6 and 8 inch trees that are already there that just don't get shown. If you looked at a Google image, you'd see that was treed. The area to the far right that's closest to Central Park Road needs to stay clear because of an easement to be able to service that pond, plus visibility and an easement that extends back from Central Park Road. There is some room for some additional trees to be planted at some points in the property, and including the drainage feature that'll be furthest to the left. There's some room for some additional trees there. So with that being said, we would request a special exception for the tree to be removed, again, with the full understanding that we believe that it isn't necessary because the tree's not grand. We respectfully disagree with the city on that point. We went forward with this dilemma based upon the expert advice that we received from a registered arborist to move forward. The most affected neighbor, and you'll hear people talk about this, how important this tree was. The one neighbor that could really speak about it testified under oath as to what a nuisance and to what poor health this tree was in. This board has the authority to grant the special exception and also the authority to require mitigation. In calculating, I believe that there's 39 inches of this tree, and if I do my math correctly, that a persimmon is mitigated at 50%. I would propose, and my client's prepared to mitigate the removal of this tree by 78 inches, which, if I'm correct, would represent 4 times at the 50% mitigation rate. We intend to speak with Reverend Seabrook about planting trees on his side of that property line. Additional trees can be planted. And again, that would, by 78 inches, that would work out to be about 15 trees, which would be of good grade and which would be of good of higher category, rather than this accident of a tree that came up after Hurricane Hugo. So with that being said, and I appreciate your patience for my ability to speak at length on this issue, we would respectfully request that the board grant the after-effect approval. My client would consent to 7 to 8 inches of mitigation that we would seek to place within the property where possible, along the property line with Reverend Seabrook on their side of the property line, and as possible in another location that the city may request where some of those trees could be planted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. I'll continue. This is his last slide. So it's very clear to those that are in the development community that this is the city's definition of diameter at breast height. It means the total diameter in inches of a tree or liters measured 4.5 feet above grade. In instances where a tree splits into liters below 4.5 feet, but above existing grade, and the liters are physically attached above the ground and of the same species of tree, all liters equal to or greater than 6 inches in diameter shall be measured separately and counted as one tree. So I have been in this position for, I believe, 25 years now. I have worked both with Natural Directions, many of their field arborists, and have been in the woods numerous times, and we encounter trees that are connected at the base as it emerges out of the ground, and they're very aware of the method that we measure and consider trees to be grand. You know, when I get asked early on in projects to go on site, you know, we set up meetings, we go out, they're making an application, I need to verify the findings of, I'm relying on a document typically that's handed to me. I believe it to be true as far as now, of course, as we're cruising through the woods, as I stated in the earlier application, you know, I question, oh, this tree looks like it's pretty darn near grand, and I'll slap my diameter tape around it and confirm that their measurement it indeed is 23.6 7. So I'm not the tree surveyor, and I'm not the, I'll go out and truth information given to the city, but I'm not out seeking, I'm not locating grand trees per se. So I have to back up to, my very early comment is that, this area clearly was being maintained. You can see the mow lines in the grass. It was, and there was some things around the base of this tree. So, I don't know, mistakes happen. It was just perceived to be on the neighboring property. The property line wasn't identified clearly with stakes. The corner pins, I assume, were identified when the surveyor did the meets and bounds. And then, but I'm in the woods basically, and I'm not looking for grand trees. As we walk, we question whether or not one is, but anyway. So definition of DBH, clearly in the ordinance, been there for years. I consulted with legal. We had numerous conversations about how to proceed with this. So it is going to be the recommendation of the city to approve the after the fact special exception. And I apologize, I can pull it up if need be and screen share, but the ordinance speaks to if a tree is unlawfully removed on a single family residential zoning, the board can require up to 3 times the DBH inches removed. So the total of 8, 9, 11, 11 is 39, and you would multiply that by 3, and you come up with 117 caliber inches. So that's the recommendation, is to plant 117 caliber inches. And the ordinance further goes on to state that those inches required for the unlawful removal of a grand tree shall be in the form of a 4-inch caliber tree. So you take 117, you divide by 4, you get 29.25. And as many developers and everybody knows, that when we have a fraction of a something, the city rounds up, except for density. So that would be 30 trees. Must provide a landscape plan that shows the additional canopy trees required above, in addition to the trees shown on the approved road construction and landscape plans. And then the mitigation trees must be planted prior to final plat approval. These are all in HOA areas and to be on drip irrigation. So with that said, Mr. Chair, I guess you're going to open it back up to Ellis if he wants to add anything to my comments there before we move into opposition.
Say yes. We'd open it back up to the applicant since we didn't get through your full presentation.
That's correct. That's correct.
He presented. And if he's got any response, or if anybody else from his team would like to speak, now would be the time.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me, Mr. Adrian?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure so we appreciate the city's recommendation of approval. Eric and I had not, and that is on me for not reaching out to him prior to the meeting to see what the city's position would be. The difference between the 79 inches that we proposed and the 117 that the city would see, we're comfortable with that. Eric knows the site well, and just the ability to locate 30 more trees in locations that aren't going to interfere with other trees, I think is the one thing that I would raise, and would just, I think, ask for some flexibility to say that they be planted on site where feasible in consultation with Mr. Schultz, that otherwise they could be planted off site. Again, I'm not an expert in that area, but it's just something that comes to mind.
Okay. Eric, was there anybody else that, I know we saw a bunch of letters that were written and submitted. Is there anybody registered to speak in favor or opposed to this application from the public?
Yes, there is, and we have to stick to the protocol, the Innovate site. So we have to promote Harriet Revis, please. She registered to speak, and she's the only one that registered to speak on this item.
All right. So Ms. Revis, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Have I been unmuted?
You
Yes.
are unmuted. So I'm going to swear you in, and then if you would state your full name and your address, and you'll be able to begin. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right.
My name is Harriet Revis, and I live in the Marlboro subdivision at 509 West Wimbledon Drive, 29412, which is the neighborhood adjacent to this parcel. I am president of the Marlboro Neighborhood Association. We oppose giving the developer retroactive approval for blatantly removing a tree designated as a grand tree by the city. The developer came before this board in August 2021, and its request for removal was deferred. The board asked the developer to review the plans to see if the tree could be saved. The developer is snubbing his nose, well, I could use a more descriptive phrase, but I won't, at the established process set forth by our city government for resolving such issues. Whether a tree comes up with a single trunk or multiple trunks is up to the good Lord. And I don't believe the ordinance makes a distinction between an original tree or a tree that has a rebirth from the original. If branches fell, perhaps the owner should have pruned out dead wood. With the heavy winds we have recently experienced, we have all had to pick up branches from trees. As someone who constantly picks up branches after storms, I would say if someone had concerns about branches from this tree, it must have been a pretty large tree. This action of the developer shows that we cannot trust the developer to follow the guidelines set forth by the city. We oppose retroactive approval for a blatant activity that the developer undertook, knowing that it was wrong to do so, based on moving through the process required by the city. Thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Nobody else registered to speak, and there was an incredible flurry of activity over the past couple of days. To my count, we received 29 emails from various folks within Charleston, maybe in Charleston County. I did not go through, I did not have time to look at all the addresses and whether they provided that or not. I did my best up to around 3:30, and I forwarded those emails to you in 2 groups via PDF. But they all have the same tone, as Ms. Revis indicated, that they would like you to not approve the after the fact special exception, and of course speak to the value of trees and so on and so forth. So yeah, 29, and then of course our deadline under our COVID protocol, and I hope it ends soon because it can get quite messy, but under the Innovate site, we did not receive any written comments for any of the agenda items, including B1, the Central Park Road item. So I hope you were able to flip through or at least scan some of the 29 emails. You might have received 25 at the time. A couple more trickled in late, but anyway.
Okay, we did. But I guess since we had someone speak that was in opposition, Ellis would have an opportunity if you wanted to address that or speak back. And then
That is correct. That is correct.
And we'll close. So Ellis, if you have anything you'd like to add.
Chairman Adrian, thank you again, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at length on the issues. Again, my client understands rules and understands how to follow rules, and we've been doing that on this project for 4.5 years. Again, we don't believe that the tree was grand, and we're being put into a process that would put us in the position of having to take the position that it was. So we communicated our intention, but we again here are, and now with the city's support and approval, seeking the after effect exception, and we'll put a lot better trees where this one nuisance tree had been. And so just thank you for your time again, and would appreciate the board's approving, and we would accept the conditions that have been stated by Mr. Schultz and the city, again, with the request that there be some flexibility as to the siting, if the board is amenable to that, those conditions, that we may need to put some of those in some other locations if it's not feasible that all of them could fit onto the site. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll now go ahead and close this application to the public, and we'll open it to the board for our discussion. And I'll begin and say that I've got several issues because I believe that our standard, I've been on the board for I think 10 years doing this, and the entire time I've been here, it's been very apparent that everybody knew that if a tree was connected at the base, then the trunks were added together to make it grand, and we have had countless number of grand trees come that were 2, 3, 4, multiple trunk trees. The application, that there was a slide that was presented, and at the bottom it said tree number 160, and then it had the 8, 9, 11, 11. It did not say trees number 160, 161, 162, 163. The fact that it came to the board in August of last year and we deferred the application doesn't mean that then you could just go out and get an opinion from someone else, say, it's not a grand tree, cut it down. The proper procedure would have been to have contacted the city again and said, we're disputing whether this is a grand tree, and you have that dispute versus just cutting it down. I will say that said, I don't know that you can just say, sorry, you're not approved. I mean, the project is in construction, and I believe that our standard, thankfully, has an outline of when somebody does the wrong thing, here's what the consequence is. It's unfortunate that we're in the position, but I believe that 117 inches of tree, 30 trees at 4 inches is significant. I do agree with the applicant that typically we would say that they need to work with the city as to how to get those trees on property, and if they can't, then I think yes, whether it's contribution to tree bank or finding other locations, but I would say that we could let Eric work that out with the applicant. So I'd be in favor.
I have a question. Eric,
Yes.
at the beginning, you were talking about how this was scheduled to go to livability court,
Yes.
and that there was a per day cost fee. You said, and you mentioned something about 8 summons. Could you explain what that was?
Yes. So as Ellis indicated, very surprising to me, the city received an envelope with a letter that stated that they had removed the tree. And I have a city attorney present tonight that can get into it a little more. There is another process going on, which he can speak to if he feels necessary. But once we got that notification that they removed the tree, we used that date from the receipt of that letter to issue summons. Of course, it's an LLC, so we did our research to figure out who the agent was. I had to travel to Mount Pleasant to an attorney's office, and it was of the legal department's opinion to issue 8 at that time, with other conditions that they make application to this board. And that was related also to the lifting of the stop work order. We stopped work. And so they worked pretty fast to not have additional summons issued per day for the violation. So then our city attorneys received the court date was scheduled. They received a request for continuance because they thought I believe their side, the development side, wanted to have this occur, and then we move on to livability. So if necessary, if you need more explanation, we do have an attorney, our city rep here to explain what's going on. You think you need that?
I don't know. I guess what I have a real issue with is the fact that we asked them to go back and study it, and they completely ignored that and very disingenuously, in my opinion, proceeded to remove the tree.
I believe that is a fact.
So, I don't, Eric, you let me know. I don't have a problem if we want to ask Ellis to respond, but at this point, there wasn't a question directed to him.
No, there
And the public portion has been closed.
So what happens if we, okay, let's just say, what if we didn't approve it? Then what happens?
I would have to ask Hayward to weigh in on that. I don't know.
I imagine they could appeal the decision, but I think, I go back to it was the wrong thing to do, and I think the standards have the consequences listed in them, and I think we just need to continue to follow through with what's been suggested by staff.
I feel that what's been suggested by staff is more than fair, considering that our guidelines are not mutable. And this talk about sprouts, I was hearing a lot of things that are just slippery slopes that really question everything that are in our guidelines. And that bothers me. So for me, I guess, besides just wanting to get that off my chest, and thank you for listening, the question about flexibility for off-site, is that then what we're left to discuss?
I don't, that gets me from a review, and I guess for lack of a better word, enforcement. We can easily review a modified landscape plan associated with the project. I'm not opposed to planting a forest. I know there's science out there that you don't want to plant trees that would compete with one another. These are nursery grown trees. It would take some years to start competing with crown and what have you, but to do it off site, we lose, I don't know where that would be. I don't feel comfortable going down the road with a contribution to the city street tree program, because I don't know what that monetary value would end up being after they try and get as much on site. I just feel that it's best if we can achieve it all on site.
Eric, is there some precedent or some way in the past that people have come to an agreement in this situation to put the neighboring properties in a better position? If the trees really can't fit on their property, which I'm not a land planner, I can't tell you, but it's obvious that this neighborhood nearby that's directly adjacent has a problem with this development. And I understand that. I understand both sides. It is what it is. But maybe if the trees can't all fit on that property, maybe they can be earmarked for adjacent property owners to create more of a buffer in the backs of those properties to try to mend fences a little bit more. I'm very much, I totally agree with what Joel is saying about why it's wrong. And I don't agree with the way this whole thing was handled, but at the same time, what is the recourse that we have? How do we make things better for everybody? And I'm not sure I know the
Right.
answer.
Right. Again, if we were to entertain planting trees in backyards of adjacent properties, we just how do we know that that tree will mature? They could sell the property. Somebody comes in, they cut down a 6-inch tree after it's been in the ground, planted at 4 inches. It's just kind of a hard thing to accept or enforce. So.
Can I ask this question though? Because the approval for the rest of the project certainly had mitigation that was going to be required, and there was a plan that was done. So can we to help maybe ease the bridge? Could we say that the proposed mitigation trees on this, instead of being the 2.5-inch caliber trees that would have been required, all these proposed mitigation trees need to be our 4-inch trees based off of the persimmon that was cut down, and those other 2.5s could become the or whatever's left of the previous approved mitigation trees could become the contribution to the city's street tree program. That way we know we at least get a large number of caliber inches back on the site. Or is that just
that is a possibility. I'm sorry, I'll be honest, my camp is more about quantity versus size. But I see where you're going. So you would take maybe a percentage of the approved mitigation and upgrade them to 4-inch trees, and then still plant a few 4-inch trees or something along that line.
Or a few of the 2-inch. I guess what I'm saying is if we've got 34-inch trees that need to be planted, if this mitigation plan had 35 trees on it, then we make 30 of them the 4-inch trees. The other 5 are the trees that were originally planned, and then the 30 trees that were replaced end up becoming contribution to the city street tree. That way we've got our bad tree is on site. We've got larger canopy from day one. I don't know. It's probably 6 of one, half dozen the other, but maybe it made it easier for. I agree. I don't think we can be planting trees on adjacent properties, but maybe when you look at this mitigation plan, the area in the on the left there, which looks like there's a bunch of single family lots that back up to this, the upper left, and maybe there can be some additional trees planted there. Maybe it stretches to the right. I don't know if there's utilities or something in there, but it seems like there's a lot of land. And you know what? Ultimately, gosh, if they've got to whack a site and say, hey, guess what? We're not going to have an extra house. We're going to plant some trees. Well, daggum it, we didn't cause the issue.
Whatever you all decide, be very clear.
Eric, I would like to actually hear from the city attorney about what the implications might be if we were to deny the application.
Okay, so Scott, could you promote Hayward? Hayward, can you hear us?
I can. I think that I'm a panelist.
Yes, you're on. I hear you.
But do you all want to talk to me in a breakout room, or do you want to have me talk in general?
What is your recommendation?
I would suggest we talk in a breakout room.
Okay, I'm not, boy, we're going to have to call on Scott how to figure that out.
Yeah, we're hitting all new things today.
Lee, do you know how to do that?
Well, we've done it before with other boards. I think Scott knows the steps. I think what you would do is we would do a conference call, and we would send the phone number out. Is that correct, Scott? Right. So we will email the phone number for the conference call.
Who's going to do that?
You know, hope you can hear me. Eric, I will forward you this information and you can forward it to board members.
What's that?
I'm going to forward you this email. It's got the steps to join the executive session. I'll set up that conference call and I'll pause this meeting.
Okay.
So be sure to mute your participation in the Zoom meeting and probably turn off your camera as well.
Do y'all have my email address?
I think I do.
It's fhgrimble@richardsonplowden.com.
Okay, you should all have received an email from me with the instructions. Did you all get the email? I hope.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now, Eric. Hang on here. 7 2.
I was able to get in.
All right, everybody, let me know when you're back. All right, I see.
Back.
I see everybody.
Back.
Okay, so this is Chairman Adrian. I just want to state that everybody is back into the February 2nd, 2022 BZA site design meeting. We just had a consult with the city's attorney and have our direction. No votes or any sort of action were taken during that. So we're going to get back to the meeting and application item B1. So if there's any other questions or comments from the board to the applicant. Or are there any recommendations for the or motions or recommendations for the approval from staff?
How many 2.5 to 3 inch trees was that?
So 117 inches divided by 3 is 39 trees.
All right. Are there any questions of the applicant, or is someone ready to make a motion?
I would like to move to amend can we amend 4-inch caliper trees for a 2.5 to 3 inch caliper tree for all of these 117 caliper inches?
2.5 to 3 inch.
Yes, so you could amend, Jennifer, we could amend the 117 from 4 inches to 3 inches, and that would be 39 trees for the mitigation. If you would, are you ready to make a motion on that?
As soon as I can figure out how to unmute this again. Yes, I would like to make a motion to amend the 4-inch caliper to a 3-inch caliper native canopy tree, 117 caliper inches.
And accepting the other items of staff's recommendation as is?
Yes.
All right. So then the motion for, is that a motion for approval?
Yes, I would like to move to approve with that amendment.
All right, so motion for approval by Jennifer with the amendment. Is there a second on that?
Can I just ask a clarification on your motion, Jennifer? Does that mean that the trees, with this recommendations, the trees will be planted on site?
Yes, because that's part of
Okay.
item 1.
I don't see that where it says on site. That's why I wanted to.
It's so
confirm.
item 1 says must plant the 117
On the
caliber
site.
is
Got it.
on the site.
I'll second Jennifer's motion.
So the motion by Jennifer, seconded by Paula. If I'm just going to do it by roll, so I'll start out. Paula.
I in favor.
All right. Ruthie.
I in favor.
Calvin.
I in favor.
Amanda.
I in favor.
All right. Jennifer.
I in favor.
And Chairman Adrian also is I in favor. So the motion of approval, 117 caliper inches on site, 3-inch trees, 39 total trees. 2, must provide landscape plan that shows additional canopy trees required above. And 3, the mitigation trees must be planted prior to final plat approval and beyond drip irrigation is approved 6-0. So thank you. And with that, we're going to go on to our next item, which is item B2. Item B2 is 108 Norview Drive, the TMS number 41504000222. Application number 2202-02-B2. Request an appeal to a staff decision to deny the removal of 1 grand trees. Section 54.3.27 requires a variance to allow the removal of a grand red maple tree. It is zoned SR1.
Okay. This is the applicant's application. This is the back of the appeal form. Property is located at 108 Norview Drive, zoned SR1. And the red maple is that wonderful tree in the front yard, full of foliage. There's almost like a sister street tree, red maple, across the street at 109. For her purposes, being just a single family or just a resident, she was able to find the original plat. That's okay. This is an aerial. I kind of rotated it. I measured it to be a 31-inch using the diameter tape red maple in the front yard. She had a certified arborist evaluate the tree, codominant mature tree, front yard, causing some damage to the foundation, driveway, aggressive root system. I don't disagree. Several cracks in the brick, surface roots. Structurally, this aging maple tree, I don't disagree that it's a very mature maple, single stem. I believe it's, grown in this manner for many years, and, it does have some included bark, but I couldn't classify the tree as hazardous. Boar infestation, a large canker, it has very rough bark. I didn't really see it as an issue, especially with no dieback, so on and so forth. But so here's some photos that she submitted, the applicant. It does have an aggressive surface root system. These were some additional slides that she asked be inserted today. I will zoom in on the letters of support or emails of support, and this is a section of her insurance policy. So you did not receive these because I received them today, but the first one is from Heather that lives at 112 Norview. My family, long-term residents, have owned the home. We're long-term neighbors with Gloria. Wholeheartedly support her petition to remove the tree. So the next one is Karen and Morel, 105 Norview, across the street. And the third one is 109, Claire and Jason Askew. So this is an additional one from 104 Norview, all in support. So as protocol, the applicant submitted a tree removal request form on November 15th. The city inspected the tree on December 3rd. That was myself, and denied the request. I shot her back an email stating that the tree was inspected on Friday, found to be a 31-inch red maple in the front yard in good health. The request, the tree is denied based on the tree not meeting the below standard. So I could not get to a point based on my ground observation and not having seen the arborist letter at that point that it was a hazardous tree. And I will talk about the standard number 2. So I just want to read that. Each protected or grand tree that is determined by the zoning administrator to be causing structural damage to a habitable building where said damage cannot be remedied without removing the tree shall be approved for removal. When there is a question of whether tree removal is necessary, the zoning administrator may require documentation from an arborist who is certified by the International Society of Arboriculture or who is otherwise qualified that said damage cannot be successfully halted through root pruning and installation of root barrier while maintaining the structural integrity of the tree. Each tree removed shall require the replacement of one recommended tree of an equivalent species. So the tree, this is obviously Google Street View, is, in my opinion, at a distance from the house that if she had not chosen to appeal and move forward with maybe getting an arborist to look at root pruning and installing a root barrier, I think we would be successful. We have what we call pictometry. It's a pretty elaborate aerial system that the city has. It has the capability to measure. I'm not saying at all that this is accurate in my measurement. I kind of took the line from the hedge in front of the house to what I thought is the house side of the trunk in this image. And you're looking at 27.8 feet. So 25, 26, 27, somewhere in there. In my opinion, plenty of distance to, if the tree is causing the cracking in the front facade, that you could easily air spade, root prune, install root barrier. Unfortunately, the ordinance does not really speak to landscape elements such as walks and driveways. So it's just causing structural damage to a habitable residence. So rough estimate on the distance the tree is from the front facade of the house. So I feel that we can, get there, in my opinion, if, 25 feet, 7 feet away, aggressive root system, water, trees want to seek favorable environments, water and oxygen. But I think root pruning is an option. So we need to identify Gloria Ashlandis. Sorry if I did not pronounce that correct. Gloria, can you hear us? Gloria, can you hear us?
Hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Gloria, we have you. This is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you in for the record, and then if you would state your full name and address. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. My name is Gloria Aslanidis, Maria Aslanidis, and I live at 108 Northview Drive in Charleston, South Carolina.
Thank you. You may go ahead and present.
This Google Earth picture is old. It doesn't show the canker on the tree. I know that it's old, but one of the cars in the driveway was totaled and is no longer in my possession. And there's a new mailbox approximately at least 3 years ago. The tree is large. I mean, it was planted in 1973, and I know that because the owner who sold us the house moved across the street and then proceeded to plant another one there. So he planted this one shortly after he moved into the house. Maples tend to live to be about 60 to 80 years, or 80, maybe 100. You didn't show the additional pictures which I sent today, which showed the signs of boar infestation, the little holes from the boars, as well as when the bark separates on a maple and it's in distress, it starts to turn a dark green. And so I sent you a picture of the bark being a dark green, as well as the reason I called someone in to trim the tree this year a little bit earlier than I normally would was because the leaves fell all within 10 days. And when I told that to a couple of the people I was getting quotes from to trim the tree, They told me that wasn't a good sign and that I should have the tree looked at by an arborist and consider removing it. The roots, this driveway that you see in the picture was repaved about 25 years ago and a root barrier was put in. Apparently it didn't, the roots probably just grew over it is what our arborist did. And now they're under the foundation of my house and you can see them behind the hedges. And I submitted pictures to that, my original appeal and then the additional pictures today. So if you would, I don't know if you can show the pictures. Those are the roots behind the hedges on the left. And then the pictures from today were in the PDF with right before the, those are the original.
I apologize. I got these. I didn't see pictures attached to the same PDF. I apologize. I got this PDF
with the letters had pages before it that had the arborist letter and more pictures.
Huh. Well, I apologize. I thought it stopped there. I didn't. I really do apologize. I can try and pull up that email. Screen share it just a minute. But continue with your anything else you have.
Also, when we were talking about it, one of my friends is, well, actually my cousin Elizabeth is an insurance agent. She told me you need to check your policy. So I called USAA and I explained the situation. I sent them the arborist letter and they said if I don't remove the tree within a reasonable period of time, that it falls under neglect and that any damage from that tree falling onto my house for a storm will not be covered. They told me to tell you all that I have to hold somebody responsible. And if I'm doing the best of liability, I mean, I think it's a little harsh, but if my insurance won't cover it, I'm not allowed to take it down. I don't know what to do. I want to protect my home. I'm going to, as required, I'm going to plant another tree. We love the tree. It's just that it's sick. I mean, if I didn't love the tree or we didn't love it, we would have cut it down 38 years ago when it was still young enough to do so. We've always maintained it. It's just that it's sick. I just want to remove it, put a new tree in its place, protect my home from, any more foundation damage, as well as it being insured during a storm. I don't know what else to do. When we replaced the driveway 25 years ago, root pruning was done and a barrier was put in. They've obviously grown over it. The tree's lived most of its life. I don't know what else to do.
Okay, I will screen share. Let me, I'll stop this one and okay, just a moment. Everybody see that?
The little holes are, the tiny ones are the bores. The larger holes are just cracks, normal cracks in bark.
I apologize.
Like if you see the smaller green arrow on the left, the big hole along the triangular or the point, that's just a normal bark thing. The small tiny holes where the arrow is pointing are the actual borer infestation. I tried to blow it up as much as I could. The bigger holes are not borers. They are just natural, usual, bark spreading.
I'll have to,
and then here's the section of the dark green. And they also said one of the signs of the tree being ill was in fact that the leaves did fall really quickly, like in 10 days. My neighbor's trees across the street, his leaves took almost a month to fall. I mean, it was easy and raking them up this year, not having to do it week after week, but I didn't realize it was a sign that something was wrong.
well, I am not I'm a zoning principal planner. Jen, does this look familiar, working with trees?
Yes, I'm just taking it in. Hold on.
I've had to learn about maples lately, more than I ever knew.
I don't know what kind of borer it is because I'm not an expert in the realm. Did anyone mention to you?
There were some like little black ones. They look like little black things. I did find a beetle on the tree, a couple of them that were just decayed, that were stuck to it. But I just thought those were normal things. So, but I do have a picture of it I can send to him via email. But I just thought it was I just thought it was weird and something my nephew would like.
Well, what concerns me is dropping its leaves in a matter of 10 days is sounds like it might not even leaf out in the spring. I don't know.
Well, my mom thought it wouldn't last year, but it did. Not well, but it did. And then and I know it's not a good sign, but when the 10 days to someone who breaks up the leaves was like, oh, yay, this is over quick this year, because usually it's a span of a few weeks where I'm constantly breaking things up. But it was quick and deep, But we had, I mean, like I said, we enjoyed the tree. Otherwise, we would cut it down when we moved in 38 years ago. It's not that we don't like trees. They're around our property, as you can see towards the back. The property, the original property lines that were shown from the city don't include the easements, but the original plats that I had showed the easements, and those trees towards the back, some of them are on my side of the easement, as well as the ones around my shed, the little shed to the left corner, that little white building.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there, I guess, Gloria, is there anything else that you have to add, or Eric, are there any people that signed up to speak in favor or against the application?
No, Mr. Chair, nobody registered to speak in favor. You have the emails of people supporting the removal, and we received no written comments.
Yeah, and those were from Miss Pointer, is my neighbor at 104. Heather is my neighbor at 112. 108, the Haskins, who just moved in, have the same tree. They moved in a few years ago. And Karen, who was Karen and Merrill, who were original owners, are across the street directly across the street from Miss Pointer.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go ahead and close the public portion for this application, and it'll be open to the board for discussion. And I don't know, I don't have the experience in this, as I'm not an arborist, but Eric, I think I'd say I probably lean in favor of granting her the approval based off of the pictures and the letter from her arborist. But Amanda and Jennifer really would kind of lean on y'all for this. Sorry to call you out.
Can we go back to the arborist letter?
Just for my part, and not being an arborist or knowing what I'm looking at either, I can tell you that I think that's a serious hardship, not being able to remove the tree and losing your insurance.
Yes.
I think that certainly needs to test. And I also think that the fact that the neighbors are all in favor of it, I'm inclined to lean towards approval, but I will defer to the experts on the technical aspects of it.
Yeah, I would say, unfortunately, I think this is a good example of when the arborist should be present with the applicant to be available to answer questions. And it's kind of after the fact in terms of it's sort of, we just had this discussion. The damage is already done, right?
Well, what really concerns me is that leaf drop. in 10 days. And so between that and then what insurance is telling her about, I mean, obviously she's not a person who's trying to be neglectful, but I don't think we should, it's tough. What I'm looking at right now is a few different bores. I'm looking for one that is black that, I mean, without having it identified, I don't have a way to say, this is how you treat it. And so as the arborist in this group, really the only thing that I have to lean on is that 10 days that the leaf fell as an indicator of what's going on inside the tree. I don't know if at that point we would request like a core sample, or what are your feelings about this, Eric?
The way I'm starting to lean with your discussion, and obviously from a ground observation, I did not see that small of a hole, nor the canker. I don't know how large that was. I don't know if that was very visible in the photos. I think the thrust was the green arrows looking at the borehole penetrations. Mm-hmm. I'm inclined to change my recommendation to approval. I thank Gloria for all her hard work, and I sincerely apologize. I didn't focus. I thought maybe the photos were the same as the original, but I wanted to get the letters in. I got that part right. With the condition that if we were to permit this tree at staff level, it would be just 1 2.5 inch tree in the front yard.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, and it's just sort of, I've understood that the ambrosia beetles can affect red maples as well as some of its other favorite tree species. And I know that bark separating from the trunk, but there's a very specific look to it, is what I understand. And I would just be concerned as to what kind of beetle it is. Is that a possibility? Because I know that you're supposed to burn that wood specifically.
Yeah. Again, let me try and, when I get up close to the tree, obviously, to measure it. And this really doesn't do it justice, but it's kind of a flaky bark. And I think that was evident with her close-up pictures. That beetle leaves a lot of sawdust behind. I didn't see any sawdust per se. You can tell when a tree is really being attacked by the.
Okay.
You see a lot of sawdust. In this case, I didn't. When were these pictures taken, Gloria? I'm just curious. Is this semi-leafed out, or is this before the leaf drop? When I was there, I did notice that. I assumed, and this was maybe just an assumption, because I did look across at the sister tree that I think she spoke of across the street, and it had maybe a few leaves on it with your typical fall color. The yard was very clean. There were no leaves when I was there on that December 3rd day or whatever it was. But I had thought that we had a pretty good cold snap, in which I kind of assumed the frost kind of hit it and made the abscission occur.
The trees, those pictures were taken in November,
yeah. So anyway,
I'm pretty sure, because my Volvo is on that side. It was right after the other car was totaled. I was starting to use it. I just sent you a picture of one of the beetles on the tree, Eric,
Oh,
just in
good.
case you guys needed it.
Thank you.
You want to see that, Jen?
I do, please.
Okay.
Gloria, when did your leaves fall? Was it before, well before other trees in the neighborhood were falling, or was it well timed?
No, mine was in the beginning of October. I mean, they fell and fell quick. And Jason across the street even said, he goes, wow, you know, your leaves fell quick. You're so lucky. I said, I know. And he goes, mine are still up there. I mean, and then we joked. I said, when my dad was alive, they used to use the leaf blower to try and shoot it up towards the tree.
Do you see that?
Oh, yeah.
I actually captured that beetle because I thought my nephew might like it, to see it.
I'm interested in what this is, but I offhand don't know.
And I'm not saying that that beetle caused anything. I'm just saying it was, I saw it and I thought it was, I'm thinking, you know, my nephew might like it.
That's the exoskeleton. Of the
Exoskeleton.
beetle. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, just because of my mother, we're going to plant a bigger than 2-inch round tree. I mean, really, you know, liked it. I'm going to put a nice tree there. Enjoyed having one there, the shade that it provided.
What are you all seeing now? I think I missed my slide.
I see Xerox at Charleston, sc.gov.
Yeah, okay.
Nope, now let's go back to a leader to 2021. So we're getting closer.
There we go.
Yes. We all, I think I'm probably with Eric, and I lean more towards the approval to remove. It's a pretty big yard. We get 2.5-inch trees in the yard.
As long as I can I space them appropriately so they're not one on top of each other?
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
But if anybody else have anything to add? Jennifer, you still researching?
yeah, I fell down the rabbit hole. I'm so sorry. I'm really interested in trying to figure out what this is. But anyways, I'm going to put that aside. I wonder if Amanda's onto something with this being the ambrosia beetle, because that exoskeleton certainly would fit with the body shape of a mature ambrosia beetle. So, but this whole business of the leaf fall in 10 days in the beginning of October, that really isn't a good sign. And I guess at this point, I mean, would it be appropriate for me to move for approval?
Yes.
I think it would, but I think one thing that we could recommend to the homeowner would be to call Clemson and have them just come take a gander at the tree, because they do have people that are specifically looking at the ambrosia beetle. And if that was the case, the wood would have to be carted away and burned, right?
Yes.
That's my understanding. So I think that would be worth doing, just so, you know, it doesn't spread throughout your neighborhood.
I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah. But I agree, Jen. I think we can go ahead, and I know Joel did, and everybody else is awfully quiet with this one, so.
I'll second an approval.
All right, well, Jennifer, you want to state a motion?
Yes, I move to approve the removal of this tree at the staff recommendations.
Okay, but
I said one tree. I said one tree. Somebody mentioned two. What do you guys want to do?
I think I'd like to see two. Can we make that motion with two 2.5-inch trees?
So move to approve with 2.5 trees and removal in consultation with Clemson.
Thank you.
Yes, but now, sorry about that. Okay, so that motion is given by Ruthie, seconded by Amanda. And then if anybody would say, I guess everybody say aye in favor or nay.
Aye in favor.
Aye in favor.
I in favor.
Aye in favor. Is anybody opposed? Okay, then that's approved 6-0. And, thank you for your time. Clemson guys, say go Tigers. Okay, so we'll go to item B3. And item B3 is 1455 Folly Road, TMS number 33400000066, application number 220202B3. Requested variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 5 grand trees. Requested special exception from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 3 grand trees. Requested variance from section 54.330 to allow a reduced impervious construction setback near the base of 5 grand trees zoned GB and LI.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we will get this rolling here. The application, owner, Industrial Ventures LLC, applicant Bob Amaral, Revere Group. So this parcel is owned LINGB. So the front portion adjacent to Folly is GB, the rear is LI. Survey has a little pocket of wetlands on the Folly Road frontage, and it abuts a business park to the rear with a existing drainage easement. So the proposal is to not get into that wetland system and build a self-storage facility, which is permitted in LI. And the brown units around the perimeter are RV and boat storage. They would bring the access drive. There's already kind of a dirt road that kind of goes through the site, gravel road, and an existing curb cut at that point on the state SCDOT road. Build the required multi-use path required by the Folly Road overlay. And we got into some trees. So they hired a consulting arborist out of Hilton Head, Bluffton area, to come up and evaluate the trees. You can see his grades, his truthing of the DBH and comments. This is with the protected tree layer on as well. One lot of record, so they'll meet the 15 trees per acre with the trees in the front being preserved at this point in time. We don't know the exact future of the front, but and then the grand trees. So Chris Gerard evaluated the trees specific to numbers and position on the lot. There's his numbering system as he moved through the site. and then his photo and grade and condition. So I'm going to run through these because I selected the trees in question, and we'll look at those more closely blown up. So tree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. So the trees in question are 3 and 4. And they are located, I believe, in the middle of the self-storage building. Pretty significant lean on number 4, dual leader with included bark on number 3. We move to tree number 29, which is a elm. And then 30 should be, I think, survey or labeled as, but is a surveyed as a gum, but is a red maple. Included bark, not in great shape. And then these are the trees going out the access road, 25, 26, 27, 28. Well, oh, I'm going the wrong direction. I'm sorry. 6 and 7. So 3 and 4. Sorry about this. 6 and 7. And 19 and 21. So there's the maple and another live oak. So studying the plan, the live oak in the northwest corner is blue because it's a B grade, a double leader, but in pretty good shape. I believe they can modify the pond to preserve that. The 17, 11, 15, 13 live oak near the common property line is in pretty decent shape, a grade C. I am going to recommend approval that they do not encroach on the tree and remove 4 self-storage units. Number 22, maybe a proposed property line, not known at this point, but grade C, they just removed the asphalt on the end of that stored RV and boat storage. Preserved trees 12 and 14, they're water oaks and a laurel oak. I think we can reduce the drive lane down to 20 feet with a ribbon curb, possibly narrow that up, get that road through there, shift the sidewalk. The gravel road is already there in basically, and just move the sidewalk to have it link up with the Folly Road sidewalk. So again, to back up, my apologies here. Live oaks are in the center. Oak. And these 2 here. Then they were proposing to remove on the upper side, on the north side of the driveway, but preserve those, just move the sidewalk. Staff recommends approval with the condition to allow the removal of trees 3, 4, 6, 7, 19, and 21. Must plant 181.5 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site. Must submit a landscape plan to be approved both by DRB and TRC. Must use 4-foot chain link fences, tree protection barricades. Must preserve tree number 2, shift the pond in order to save the tree. Must remove the proposed boat RV storage and pavement to provide the impervious construction setback for trees number 2 and 22 as shown. Must preserve trees 12 and 14 by shifting the sidewalk as shown. Must have a certified arborist prune and treat the grand trees to be preserved. And with that, we need to recognize Bob Almerall, Chris Gerard. Chris or Bob, can you hear us? Chris or Bob?
This is Bob. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
got you,
sir.
Bob.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eric.
This is, and Chris is here as well. Okay, good. So this is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you all in for the record. And then when you speak, just state your full name and address. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I will.
I do. Excellent. Whoever wants to start, state your name and address, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is Bob Almerall with Revere Group. We're the site civil engineers. Also available, should there be any questions that Chris or I may not be able to answer, we have Nolan Borden, who is with Baranov Holdings. They're the contract owner, developer of the property. Also have Andrew Amatrano, who is with Arco Murray, the general contractor, and Jay Claypool, who is the land use attorney on the site. But I believe Chris and I should be able to handle most of your questions from the board. Eric, thank you for a good presentation. I think you covered everything. There's just a few items I'd like to touch on, Chairman. We appreciate your consideration of this request. As Eric mentioned, this is a split zone, so that is why the allowable self-storage units are on the western portion of the site, as you see on the site plan. We did meet in the field, had a good conversation with Chris and Eric about some of these trees, and we agree with the majority of the recommendations that Eric has put forth. Just kind of walking through the site briefly, tree number 1, which is the blue one in the upper left corner in the pond. Well, let me step back. Since our field meeting and since our formal application to the BZA, we have had the opportunity to advance our grading and our design to make sure that we could work around some of these trees, and I believe that is the case. So we are able to modify the pond as Eric has requested, and are proposing that tree number 1, never was to be removed. It just didn't look like it graphically on this exhibit. But the pond grading, as we go through the TRC process with Eric, will reflect that accordingly. Tree number 2 is a nice tree. I think the only question, I guess I just want to go on record of, and we talked about this in the field, the current city code does require that the tree protection zone be calculated by the sum of the branches, and that is a quad branch tree, number 2. We did note in the field that the actual drip line of the tree was significantly smaller than what is reflected in the yellow tree protection zone. Now, we do understand that without actual investigation for the true root zone, that is not always indicative of the root zone. However, I do have had the opportunity to reevaluate that area. We have eliminated 2 additional units as from what you're seeing on the screen. So we do have minor encroachments on one side in a current plan. I realize that's not official. It has not been submitted to the board, but we do believe that we can, with the shifting of those units, eliminating a few units at the owner's approval, that we can work almost entirely out of that tree protection zone. And then Eric, I guess there is one corner where I think I'm encroaching about 2 feet. And so I don't know if that's something that I would be able to work with you through the TRC process. It's nothing as drastic as what you're seeing on the exhibit on the screen, though.
I'll stick to my condition that 4 are removed, but the board can discuss.
Understood. So yeah, our goal is going to be working outside that tree protection zone for that tree. Tree number 22, we have already removed that asphalt for that loading zone. And so we are outside of that tree protection zone for tree number 22. I did want to clarify, Eric, on your condition number 3, it's stated as tree 2. I believe you meant tree 1.
Yes, sorry.
No problem. Just want to clarify. The majority of the remaining trees, as Eric outlined, are kind of in the building footprint or the drive aisle. So the only one I'd really like to discuss a little bit further now are the two trees where the sidewalk is. That's trees 12 and 14 in the lower area. Eric, I know you may not remember this conversation because you go to hundreds of site visits, but when we were standing out there near Folly, you had suggested that we might want to, in addition to narrowing this drive where we had an opportunity, but to actually bend it to the north a bit. As we went through the grading exercise of that road, because of the special protection area and the significant amount of pond volume that is needed, the site needs a fair amount of fill. So as we are coming from Folly, that drive aisle actually needs to be raised above existing grade. So as I started looking further at the grading limits coming off the edges of that drive, what I found is I was encroaching more than I wanted to into trees 10 and 28 on the south side. And so in addition to taking your advice from the field and kind of trying to stay further away from tree 13 near the entry, I also moved it, probably about 8 feet further north to stay completely out of the tree protection zone for 10 and 28. But the net result, Eric, is now I'm significantly further into tree 12 than what is reflected on your drawing.
I see. Well, I will agree that the trees as a community on the south side, planned south of this exhibit, are the finer and better trees in that green strip between the property line and the road. It will be a wonderful edge to the entrance. So if the board agrees with what you're saying, I'm willing to consider modifying the condition.
Thank you. I think that's really all I have. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything, Chris, or anything that you would like to add, or you wanted to see if there's any questions that come?
Whatever questions you have for me, I would be happy to answer. I don't really have anything to add right here. The drawings that are shown here are not exactly the drawings that I was shown this afternoon, which show that some of the changes to the spaces around tree number 2, and so that's going to look different on the next drawing, and that to me looked pretty good. Looked good. So.
Okay, thank you. And then Eric, did we have anybody? Pretty sure we didn't, but just to make sure we don't have anybody signed up to speak.
I do have one letter that came in. I faxed this to y'all from Susan Milligan. It was an email. And while I am deeply disappointed in the possibility of 8 grand trees on this wooded acreage at 1455 Folly Road, I can see the site plan where the building will be set back from the road and there will be green space and landscaping in front, hopefully to somewhat hide this facility from Folly Road. While opposed to the removal of the 8 grand trees for this development, I ask that if you decide to allow the developer to remove these trees, that they are required to mitigate these grand trees by planting new live oaks on James Island, hopefully on the site and nearby by working with the city to do so. Regarding the application on reduced setback, please approve this request and ask that the developer use great care in building near these grand trees and protect them. I would ask the city staff follow this process carefully and ensure the health and safety of the grand trees. The ultimate loss of the trees in this wooded is staggering, with over 150 trees being removed per the image attached. We cannot continue to lose our wooded wetlands, sponge forest on James Island, so important to controlling our flooding and ecological balance. Please ensure that many new trees are planted on the island to replace these important mature grand hardwoods. We trust your board will require detailed conditions for the removal of these trees and for staff to follow the process closely and diligently to ensure the replenishment of our island's urban canopy, for which is more important than ever in light of increasing rains, storms, and rising waters. Signed, Susan Milligan, James Island.
All right.
No one registered to speak in opposition, and then that was the only email I received, no written comment through Innovate.
Okay, great. We'll close the application to the public. It'll be open to the board for discussion. And I'll say again, thank you, Eric. So it looks like we have an opportunity to say, make sure we save that the oak that was in the pond, and thank you to the applicant for revising that grading plan. I agree. Let's make sure tree number 2 is well protected. Sounds like they've already addressed that. I think I'm okay, Eric, if we revised for trees. It was 12 and 14, I think, that were along that drive aisle.
Yes.
Those did need to be removed. I think I'm okay with that, because you're right. There's the existing trees on the south side of that drive aisle will provide a wonderful entry. So that's my thoughts. Any other thoughts, questions, or emotion? All right, Joe.
Is the entire site or any of these or any of the remaining trees, are you taking out all of the smaller trees around the perimeter? Is anything remaining?
So there is a buffer requirement, as you can tell, the dash line. So the protected trees, there may be a little bit of a encroachment into the buffer to meet back down to existing grade. Now that I'm hearing about the fill, nothing will be saved in the pond, obviously, and they're very close to an existing other storage facility on the planned north side. So a couple of protected trees there. The majority will be in the front.
Yeah, that worries me a little bit, using the whole site when that looks like it's obviously going to be a developable portion in the future. But
that part in the front's got the wetlands that consumes most of it, I believe. You know, so there's maybe a little bit of area along that drive, but there's a lot of do not build area that's going to be maintained.
I can state that I believe I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but this isn't a special protection area. I think you're on the north side of a basin that has issues. So I don't know how that wetland will play out in the future. If it, there's obviously a process to go through, but.
Yes, sir. We are in a special protection area.
So very stringent stormwater requirements here.
So are there any other questions or comments? Are there any objections to the board, or should we go ahead and make a motion?
can we go back to the recommendations?
Yes. So keep those images.
Yeah, that.
So they're knowing that they shifted the road a little bit to the north due to grades. They're asking that 12 and 14 still are in play for removal. And then the sidewalk would maybe have to go around the 24-inch laurel oak. They're pretty much, they want to stay, the point of contact with Folly is pretty much hemmed in there with, they don't want to get into too much moving that around. But so if you come in and then you swing to the north a little bit, the two trees would be impacted pretty severely. So I think if that eliminates all but maybe a slight encroachment on 13 and 27, but 11, 10, 28, and 9 get greater space. I'm supportive of that. I still feel very strongly about 4 units being lost around tree number 2. And they already mentioned that the loading zone was removed, and tree number 1 in my condition labeled as 2, they've already modified the pond. So
Now, looking at that little enlargement, I see that we have a, on the bottom, there's a tree number 23 is a 15-inch live oak, and that's remaining. And then we have an 18-inch live oak that's a protected tree, that's number 8. I guess there are 2 trees there. There's number 8 and number 9. Is there any way to work the road around that one?
So
What was that rated?
yeah, well, the shape of the building, I guess you could maybe bump out if the road moves north a little bit. You know, it's going to be kind of a weird, you know, to get into that drive aisle, little wiggle. But
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not sure if you want me to interject or not, but happy to try to answer that question.
I say yes, please do.
Okay, thank you. We did swing the road. We are tied where we connect into Folly. So then the road is now arching to the north as we've been describing, but then to realign with the east-west southern drive aisle that's south of the main building, the road has to then kink back down to tie in. And then that is, you know, currently that's where the dumpster enclosure is. And that area is approximately 3 to 4 feet above existing grade because of the fill condition. And so even if we were to eliminate that trash enclosure, I'm not sure that I could work around that particular tree just because of the fill condition.
Thank you.
so back to the conditions, there's the images, there's the conditions. So we would just have to add in the inches. If you all agree with trees 12 and 14, I would just add in the inches to the mitigation.
Could you go to the pictures of 12 and 14, the photos of them?
So I didn't include them enlarged, but we can see them up here. There's 13 at the top.
Okay.
And 12 is at the bottom. You can see the dirt, the dirt road is to the left of that tree. That's kind of where the road is being aligned. But now that that's being built up, I do have maybe a concern. I didn't, you know, we don't get into the grading necessarily at this level.
I think I would suggest that we add those caliper inches back in for 12 and 14 and allow the removal.
I'm in agreement with you, Joel.
Do you know what that is, Eric?
So I believe one is a water oak. So you're looking at 12 is a water oak, so 50% of 25, so that's 12.5 inches.
13 inches.
And 13 is a water oak as well, 21, 13.
No, it's number 14, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, 14. Laurel oak, I'm sorry. So you're looking at 25 inches, that's 3/4. Laurel oak's 3/4, so 25. You're looking at 18 inches there.
Okay. It's like an additional 31 inches.
Yes.
He had 181, was it? $181.5. I already rounded up to 0.5 on the other, but yeah, so,
Your total would be 212.
yeah. All right. Does anybody want to make a motion about that?
What was the total?
212.
I'll make a motion for approval for staff recommendations, changing item 1 to plant 212 caliper inches.
And allowing item 6 to be stricken, because we'll remove those trees 12 and 14.
Right. And shift the road to create more room for those other trees. What numbers were they?
So
12 and 14, I believe. 12 and
14 to be removed. I don't know that we need to address the road, because I think the road's already been shifted.
Okay.
I think that it would just be to allow the removal of, and you could actually maybe read the trees that he has in there. So it's, trees 3, 5, whatever it was, and add 12 and 14 to it. And then adjust the inches to 212. And then the other, yeah. So Paul, if you want to restate it and just actually list the trees that he's got there, because he's got 3, 4, 6, 7, 19, 21, but add in 12 and 14 to that list.
Okay. Make a motion for approval according to staff's recommendations and conditions, amending item 1 to remove trees 3, 4, 6, 7, 19, and 21, adding in trees 12 and 14, planting 212 caliper inches, and also striking item 6.
That's perfect. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Was it Jennifer? Was that you?
Yes.
All right. So then we just say aye in favor or nay in favor.
Aye in favor.
Aye in
Aye in
favor.
favor. Aye in favor.
All right. Is anybody opposed? Excellent. Then we have approval 6-0 on that one as well. Everybody, thank you. This was a long one.
Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Have a great night.
Have a great evening. Eric, thank you for all your work. Lee, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Have a good one.
in person next week, right?
We will play that by ear. We're still not sure. We are still not sure whether we'll be in person or not. So stay tuned.
We will, but so Paula, thank you, because I think going into the executive session was important. I think it was good to hear the attorney's take on things.
Yeah, I think so too. So sorry for the extra time, everybody, but I found that educational and important. So now we got to get Lee and Eric working on an amendment.
Well,
to the ordinance.
they'll be back with similar stuff.
It's one thing when a developer, it's an accident, right? But this was on that. So
Makes your stomach turn.
So it is what it is though, right? And on that last one,